is about what I think, because it seems in tennis, unlike other sports, and over the course of time, people, including our now president, wasn't present.
The most uncomfortable conversation in tennis right now involves three people: Cahill, Agassi, and Sinner, and only one of them has actually spoken. Agassi went on TNT and said Sinner had no excuse for collapsing after 1 hour and 45 minutes at Roland Garros. The tennis internet went sideways instantly. What nobody said out loud. The man Agassi was publicly criticizing is coached by Darren Cahill. The same Darren Cahill who spent a decade standing in Agassi's own corner. Cahill finally spoke on Roddick's podcast and did something almost no coach ever does. He admitted the truth. That Paris broke something in Sinner that tactics alone cannot fix. 3 match points gone in 2025. A physical collapse in 2026. 2 years. Same court. Same result. And Cahill, the man who had planned to retire because he genuinely believed a new voice would help Sinner more than he ever could, stayed anyway. That is the one thing he had been hiding from everyone. Not a training secret. Not a physical report. The quiet understanding that some losses belong to the player alone, and a coach can only watch. Drop your honest take in the comments. This one runs deep. Now, let's get into it properly. Start with what Sinner looked like walking into Paris this year. Because context is everything. 30 matches. 0 defeats. All 5 Clay Masters titles in 2026. Monte Carlo, Madrid, Rome. None of them requiring him to drop a single set at Indian Wells or Miami before that. Nike had him locked into a reported 10-year deal worth $158 million. Allianz had just signed him as a global partner. Rolex, Gucci, Alfa Romeo, Lavazza. His commercial portfolio reads like a luxury travel brochure for Northern Italy. He walked into Roland Garros as the only top-tier player remaining in the draw after Carlos Alcaraz withdrew with a wrist injury, which meant the one tournament still missing from his collection was sitting there, essentially unguarded, for the first time in his career. Court Philippe Chatrier was supposed to be where the story finally completed itself. The problem is that court has never once behaved the way Sinner needs it to. Go back to June 8, 2025. That is where this actually starts. Sinner wins the first 2 sets. He is up a break in the third. He leads 5-3 in the fourth with 3 championship points in his hand. 3 separate moments where he was 1 point from becoming the first man in years to win 3 consecutive Grand Slam titles. He won 193 points in that match. Alcaraz won 192. Sinner did not double fault once across 5 hours and 29 minutes. He did not give Alcaraz anything cheap. He played what Cahill himself later described as the greatest clay court match he had ever seen Sinner produce. And he still lost. The longest final in Roland Garros history. His record against Alcaraz from the start of 2024 to that moment: 0 wins, 5 losses. Against everyone else in the same period, 91 wins, 3 losses. The math tells you something very specific is happening. And it is not about his level. It is about one rivalry, on one court, in one specific pressure window that Sinner cannot seem to escape. An Italian journalist named Angelo Mangiant, who conducted the post-match press conference interview, later told an Italian radio program that Sinner arrived late and apologized because he had been crying in the locker room for 15 minutes. He also confided that he had not expected the crowd at Philippe Chatrier to be so heavily pro-Alcaraz. He had not seen that coming. That detail matters more than it might seem. Sinner's entire identity is built on control, emotional control, tactical control, the internal computer Cahill once described that runs live calculations during a match and almost never crashes. That crowd cracked something in the calculation. And Sinner, for the first time in 3 years of Grand Slam finals, had no answer for it. What happened immediately after the match is the detail Cahill eventually let slip, not to a journalist, not in a formal sit-down, but on Roddick's podcast weeks later, when the news cycle had already moved on. He said the team entered the locker room and sat in near-complete silence for a full 15 minutes. Every member of the coaching staff gave Sinner a hug. Nobody delivered a speech. Nobody talked tactics. Cahill's exact words were that it was not the right time to tell him what they could learn from it. There were tears from multiple people in that room. And then Sinner stood up, walked over to the players' area, and emptied a candy jar. Months of strict dietary discipline gone. Consumed in roughly 45 seconds of pure human rebellion against everything the clay season had demanded from his body. Cahill watched it happen and said nothing. Because, what do you say to that? The man had just played the best clay court tennis of his career and walked away with nothing. The confession Cahill buried at the end of that same podcast interview is the part nobody reported as the main story. He said plainly that he had still been planning to leave at the end of 2025. And the reason he gave was not exhaustion, not age, though he was approaching 60. He said if he retired, it would be for Sinner's own good. That a new coach, a fresh voice, new energy might help Sinner in ways he personally could no longer provide. Think about the weight of that sentence. This is a man who coached Andre Agassi, Leighton Hewitt, and Simona Halep to Grand Slam titles. He had spent 3 years rebuilding Sinner's serve, his physicality, his 5-set stamina. He noted that Alcaraz breaking through earlier had pushed Sinner to spend every off-week transforming his body. That Sinner's physical evolution over 3 years was partly a direct response to watching his rival succeed. Cahill gave Sinner the tools. Then he sat in a locker room in Paris watching his player cry, and quietly concluded that what Sinner needed next was something he could no longer provide himself. That is not a retirement announcement. That is a coach telling you very quietly that he has reached the outer limit of what coaching can reach. Then 2026 arrived, and Philippe Chatrier came back around. Alcaraz was gone. The draw was open. Sinner had not lost in 30 matches. He won the first 2 sets against a world number 56 without being threatened. He led 5-1 in the 3rd set. He was minutes from the 3rd round, minutes from finally clearing the early stages and moving toward the title that had been orbiting him for 2 years. And then his body stopped. Not gradually. Suddenly. He began cramping. He described it afterward as feeling very dizzy, very low in energy, unable to generate the movement he needed to serve out the set. He left the court at 5-4 in the 3rd. He returned for the 4th and had nothing remaining. Cerundolo took 18 of the final 20 games. The scoreline across sets 3-5, 7-5, 6-1, 6-1. The first number 1 seed eliminated before the 3rd round at Roland Garros since the year 2000. His 30-match winning streak, the finest sustained run of his career, ended on the same court where 3 match points had already been taken from him 12 months earlier. That is when Andre Agassi appeared on TNT Sports and said what Cahill had been privately carrying for 12 months. Agassi's exact line, delivered on camera with the kind of bluntness only someone with 8 Grand Slam titles earns the right to use. There is no excuse for a player of Sinner's level to run into a wall after 1 hour and 45 minutes. The clip went online. The tennis world fractured instantly. Some defending Sinner. Some agreeing with Agassi. Most people missing the detail that makes this moment genuinely extraordinary. The man publicly questioning Sinner's physical preparation is the same man whose own career was constructed with Darren Cahill standing in his corner for a decade. Agassi knows exactly how Cahill prepares players. He knows what Cahill's teams look like from the inside. And he still said it. Roddick later revealed on his own show that Agassi had texted him privately and confirmed he had spoken to Cahill directly before going public, because, in Roddick's paraphrase, you do not spend a decade with someone as your coach and then blindside them. Agassi gave Cahill the courtesy of a warning. Cahill still said nothing publicly in response. Not a word. Greg Rosetsky, speaking on TNT, tried to defend Cahill's work without fully contradicting Agassi, and the way he navigated it revealed more than a direct answer would have. He said Agassi was correct in what he observed, but that nobody outside the team actually knows what is happening inside it. He said he would love to hear from Cahill specifically. He pointed to the doping case in 2024, 3 months away from the tour, came back, reached a Roland Garros final, then won Wimbledon, and argued that Sinner's team would take Agassi's words seriously precisely because of what they had already survived together. What Rosetsky was describing, without naming it directly, is the exact tension sitting at the center of this entire story. The people closest to the situation know something the public commentary does not. And the one person who could clarify it has chosen silence. What Cahill was hiding is not a hydration protocol or a scheduling error. It is the thing he said out loud on that podcast, and that nobody treated as the headline. He said Sinner will never get over the 2025 final. Present tense. Future tense.
Not past.
He did not say Sinner would recover and move forward the way champions do. He said that match would stay with him forever. And in the same conversation, he said his respect for Sinner had grown more from watching him lose that final than 3 years of winning had ever produced. A coach gaining deeper respect from watching his player absorb a catastrophic defeat is not a standard post-match sentiment. It is someone watching a human being take a hit that would finish most careers psychologically and remain standing. Cahill was not hiding a secret about Sinner's body. He was sitting with the knowledge that Paris had moved into Sinner's psychology in a way that no training block or tactical adjustment can reach, and that the only honest thing he could do was stay close and watch what the player did with it. The Wimbledon moment, 5 weeks after Paris 2025, is the one beat in the story that does not follow the pattern of loss. And it matters precisely because of everything that came before it. Before the final, Sinner half-joked that if he won, he would get to decide Cahill's future. He won in 4 sets over Alcaraz, first Italian man to lift the Wimbledon trophy. The coaching staff celebrated on the grass at the All England Club, and Cahill confirmed shortly after that he would stay for at least another year. His exact words, "I am a man of my word." He also confirmed in the same period that Sinner would be the last player he ever coaches. No one after this. The man who believed a fresh voice might serve Sinner better than he ever could, chose to be that last voice anyway. Not because Wimbledon changed his analysis, but because leaving after one Paris collapse, before another could arrive, would not have been retirement. It would have been departure at the worst possible moment for the player he had built. What the Agassi criticism actually tested was not Sinner's fitness. It tested whether Cahill would publicly defend his own methods after the most visible professional failure of his time with Sinner. He addressed the scheduling decision before the Sarandolo match, calmly, factually on TNT. If the team had wanted to avoid the heat, they would have requested a night slot or the first match on Susan Lenglen. Then the collapse happened. Agassi went on television, and Cahill absorbed it without a counterstatement. That is a deliberate choice. Cahill has been in this sport long enough to understand that responding to Agassi publicly would have made the story about the coaching staff rather than the player. And protecting Sinner's focus heading into the rest of the season is exactly what the man who said Sinner is never going to get over Paris would do. Sinner is 24 years old, 4 Grand Slam titles, career prize money crossing $56 million, a brand portfolio that places him in the same cultural conversation as Federer at his commercial peak. Court Philippe Chatrier has now ended his tournament in a final and in the second round in back-to-back years. Alcaraz returns next season, healthy on clay.